Welcome back to the Ravens Chronicles. So today we have Jose Arias. Jose is a police officer from Toronto Police, but he's also an instructor of breath work. Now he's giving our intake of what's going on in the world. He's giving our intake on why he does breath work and so on and so forth. Please just tune in. This one is very interesting, more spiritual, and I mean, you won't want to miss that one. Have a good episode.
Are we recording, John?
Yeah, yes,
I missed the little red. Welcome back to the Raven Chronicles. It's all right, yeah, the little gunshot. Welcome back to the Raven Chronicles with Muninn and Huginn. Today we've got special guest Jose Arias. Am I saying that properly?
Jose Arias, yeah.
Arias, right on. Military vet, military police. You were over in Afghanistan back in what it was 08, 09?
Correct, yeah.
And now you've been with Toronto Police for just about 20 years.
Yeah, just over 17 years. June
Awesome.
2006 is when I joined. I was a court officer before, and then yeah.
Cool. And you got all kinds of stuff that you do that are pretty awesome. So you're also a Brazilian Jiu Jitsu practitioner, and you're a breathwork facilitator. So
correct. Yeah.
Lots to talk about. Let's see where this goes.
Yeah, sure. Let's go.
All right, John, you want to start us off, or should we just let Jose take the floor?
So can you just give us a small, like a 5 seconds, not 5 seconds, a few minutes of just for the people who don't know you,
sure,
just to have the spill so they understand who you are, and then we have questions.
Sure. I was born and raised in Toronto. My parents immigrated from Spain to Canada, I believe in the 60s, 70s. The dictator Franco was in charge, and they kind of fled that, and then made their way to Montreal. My older brother and sister were born in Montreal, and after several years, they moved to Toronto. Me and my twin brother were born after that. We grew up in public housing, so shootings, drug dealings, friends were murdered, you name it, seen it. At a young age, moved out around 2004-ish. Joined the Toronto Police in 2006. Actually, joined the military as a reservist in 2001 during high school. I just saw a poster on the at school, and then saw a person with a gun and explosion. I was like, that looks like fun. I want to do that, right? So I signed up for that. Got credits for that, and then in 2006 I joined Toronto Police as a court officer, and then 2012 I joined as a police constable. Been doing that since. I'm done ayahuasca 3 times, 3 separate weekends. Done breath work during the ayahuasca ceremonies, which is where I learned how to become a breathwork facilitator. Right now I'm currently with the neighborhood office. So basically I just help provide resources and things like that with communities in need, basically. A lot of bridges being built, but which is good. Actually, the youth workers there, they weren't a fan of police, and then like slowly started hacking away at them, and finally they realized, you know what, these guys are not that bad, right? We're people too, right? So, which is great accomplishment in my eyes, but so it's a big trust thing, which is good. Yeah, I went to Afghanistan 2008, 2009. I was in Hyena Road. There's a movie on it on Netflix. Talks about the road. It's IED Alley essentially. So it's like 80-90% of the deaths that happen with the Canadian soldiers specifically. I'm not too sure on the other countries, but a lot of deaths that happen there, and lost some friends. But yeah, that's me in a nutshell. Married, wife, kids. Things are good so far. No complaints.
All right.
Curious, man. I'm gonna cut you off right away, Jake.
Yeah, cut me off.
You always talk too much, anyways. So, so I'm just curious of one thing, because obviously you said you have kids. Does your kid say that they want to become cops?
Yeah, my daughter. She's almost 6, and the wife and I were kind of trying to steer her away from that as much as I wanted her to follow those footsteps. Just in today's climate, social climate, I don't think so. I mean, she wants to in the end, fine. I'm not, I'll also try to guide her as best I can, but I'll try to get her to do something else.
My son said the same, and I was like,
Tabernacle.
I was like, what about doctor? Like,
isn't that such a strange thing? You know, so many police officers I know, like almost all of them who have kids, say the same thing. And that's kind of, I don't know if you should be ashamed of that as a police officer, that you would intentionally try to steer people away from a career. So it's weird, you know, because I'm the same way. I've got 3 kids, and I don't think any of my kids are interested in policing. I mean, none of them have said it out loud. And my 5 and my 7-year-old, I mean, they're too little to really, I mean, I want to be like daddy. That's cool at 7, but who knows if it's real. But my almost 14-year-old, he's like, no way do I want to be a policeman. And that was not because I said to him, I don't want you to be. It's just, you know, his natural progression. But it's so strange that so many police officers say this about their kids. I don't want my kids to be cops.
Yeah.
And I don't know, is that shameful? Like, let's start there, Jose. What do you think? Like, why is it that we're saying this? Because we're also trying to promote the fact that policing is very important. I mean, it's the pinnacle of what holds society together, short of the military, right? So,
right. Like, I mean, like, I always wanted to become a cop because growing up in a bad neighborhood, it's like I could be a product of one or two of the environments. I can have been, you know, related to the gangs and the crime and all that stuff, or it could have been the opposite, right? Which is the path I chose. And the military helped a lot with that discipline. Growing up without a dad, he left when I was young, and like left my mom with 4 kids on her own. And it's just like, with the stats show, fatherless homes would cause and effect, right? Yep. So I don't want to be a statistic, right? Got that discipline I wanted. Like, I was growing up to be, you know, pardon my French, but a little shit, right? But, you know, at 17, joined the military and got that discipline. I was like, what am I doing? So I always wanted to become a cop because of that. And I guess it's when you work such a hard environment, and for your kids or for your family, I guess you don't want them to endure that same pain or the trouble, right? So you kind of want what's better for them, which is what every parent wants for their kids. So I think that could be a bit of that as well. So it's hard to say exactly, but I mean, I guess there's a lot of factors involved, but just with today's social climate, I just wouldn't recommend my kids to do it. I'd rather have them do something else.
Yeah. And then you know, I ask, and I'm only saying this to be like the devil's advocate, because it's kind of a strange thing. I only say this out loud because it's weird. Then who promotes their children to be policemen or policewomen anymore?
Well, what's funny is because
right,
it's just the standards. So, like, the new recruits coming in, some are awesome, right, and just switched on. Others are just like naive, and then they have to quickly learn and realize, wow, this is for real. I'm like, yeah, it's not like the movies. It's completely different. But that's, you know, hopefully they'll catch on. Some are not. I mean, it's a small amount, but some, you know, if the job's not for you, at least you have to find out that decision early on, right, in your career.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think, and this is the funny part, right? Because I was a cop in Calgary, right? And I did ride along in Ontario. It's a totally different ball game.
Oh, for sure.
Right, the liberal mentality, or the wokeness, whatever you want to call it, is so high. It was speechless. Yeah. I remember there's I'll go with this. That's fictive story, maybe. The guy bought a plane, landed in Ottawa, and he's a drunk. And there's a lot of issues when he landed it, right? And then he took off, and he's going towards Alberta. Let's go with that too. Funny enough. And anyways, I walked in, and we couldn't like write his name, like run his name on the system. For some odd reason, CPIC was not helping. So I got my own stuff. I got that running and so on. And then I walked back into whatever the place, and I was like, okay, well, the guy has like a DUI and whatnot and so on. And then my buddy was doing my ride along. He's like, he cannot say that here. And I was like, why? He's like, well, private information. And I was like, he's a criminal, period. And they're like, well, here you cannot do that. And I was like, okay, it's a bit different. And then anyways, later we had a shoplifting, and everyone had their cell phone filming us. I was like, what are they doing? What is this? He's like, well, they're waiting for you to do something wrong so they can put it on YouTube. And I'm not saying that Calgary doesn't do it. I mean, I've not served for 5 years, but that was 5 years ago, and I didn't see that as a cop here. right? It was not happening, and it's more conservative by all means. So there's way more support by the public and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
But when I watched the videos from Toronto, especially recently, right, whatever is going on with Palestine and Israel and so on, it's quite interesting.
Absolutely.
I mean, you're getting told you're going to get killed or murdered and whatnot, and I'm like, this is a threat, right? Like, this is a pure threat, and nobody does anything. Nobody arrests anyone, and I guess there's a flavor in every service, right?
For sure.
I know of.
Yeah.
But this is in the big book, criminal code. It is life threatening, right? So I don't know what my camera is doing right now, but
it seems to be good. It's one of those woke cameras that's trying to get away from you.
Stop talking. But yeah, no, I was very, very surprised to see how things were going.
Yeah, and I agree. I got into the job not wanting to get into politics, but it seems like that's all it is, and which was a bit of a blessing in disguise because it kind of introduced me to Dr. Thomas Sowell. I don't know if you guys are aware of him. One of the most brilliant person I've ever met, or not. I haven't met him, but I would love to meet him. He's about 90 years old, lives in the States. Sowell spelled the Sowell.
Oh, I've watched some of his stuff. Yeah, he's a brilliant guy.
He like the way he just breaks down stats and stuff. It's just in debates and just destroys people. It's just simple logic, right? And I mean, he's written I think over 50 books at his age, and he's just a complete genius, right? He just sees everything from the different perspective and from like bird's eye view kind of thing. But now it's again to a lot of debates, and it's like this one recruit was complaining. We had a shooting in Toronto, and they were complaining, how come we never catch these guys, involved with these shootings and stuff like that, and she didn't know what to say. So I said, okay. So I asked the community, I'm like, well, the reason why we don't 90% of convictions are basically caught from eyewitness accounts. And I'm like, does anyone want to say anything? And everyone's like, turns away, I don't want to get involved. I'm like, well, that's why. There's your answer. And then, you just keep with the police tape. It's like, listen, we want information, but we can't act on it unless we don't have any information. So that's the frustrating part, right? Because they want us to do something, but we need our help. So it's this vicious cycle, right? So we're trying to be proactive as best as we can, and the cameras, I honestly don't mind the cameras on me. I'm like, record me. And I joke, I was like, just make sure you get my good side kind of thing. But as long as I'm justified, articulate, I'm completely 100% fine with it. So
yeah, I totally agree. Yeah.
It's kind of a funny thing getting, going back to Jose and I went through police college. He was leaving, I was coming in. You're like, right? You were like the January intake of 2006, right?
No. 2006 is when I was in courts. In 2012 is when I was going to OPC.
Okay. So you didn't have to go to OPC to do the court ops job. All right.
No, I did it in Toronto.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Anyways, what I was getting at is, I never thought living where I live in the middle of nowhere. We're very remote. I mean, it's a 20-some hour drive in Ontario from where I am to where you are. And yet, even going back years ago, you'd be out doing just the most innocuous police work, and people be standing there recording you with their cameras. Like, what do you really hope to get out of this?
Fame.
Is everybody really out there now hoping that they can get the next famous TikTok video of a police doing something, quote, bad or awful or saying the wrong word in the heat of the moment, and it's very interesting. And we're on the topic of political climate, Jose, and I just recently saw, I don't know if it was the chief of police in Toronto, but it was a deputy commissioner or something, did a public announcement about how desperate Toronto is for members, for recruits, and that he was kind of pleading with the government. I wonder if you can talk about that from your side, because you're in the thick of it. What's going on there? What is it that's so difficult for you guys to get employment and recruits, and what seems to be the political struggle that's like really stymieing the Toronto Police Service right now?
So my perspective is, it seems like nobody wants to do the job because they see how much we're on the news and things like that. That's my estimation. The public is quick to react and record us, but when it comes to the bad guy doing something, right, they won't bother recording them. I don't want to get involved, kind of thing. Now, I mean, now everything's blowing up where we'll catch someone stealing, record it. Someone stuck in, on the train tracks, rather than trying to help them up, record it, right? So it's that mindset, right? That social media, I think it's just it's a lot of poison, especially the youth nowadays, right? Mental health is on the increase ridiculously, right? Since 2015. And it's like, our bread and butter is like dealing with domestic calls and dealing with people with mental health. And the amount of mental health calls we deal with, people think, police need more training. I was like, we're not the problem, right? Yes, we make mistakes, no doubt. But the amount of times I've apprehended someone because they want to hurt themselves and take them to the hospital. And then I'm in, the hospital's taking custody. I'm in the scout car doing the report, and the person's walking right by me. I'm like, I just put you in there. How is this happening?
Yeah.
People have literally, slashed on the wrists, calls where friends had taken down, tackled the person to the ground because they want to jump off the balcony. Like, it just doesn't end, right? So, I mean, how many times do I have to, put someone in care to get help, and then they're not getting that help? And the amount, not just me, there's other officers who apprehend someone the next day, they kill themselves. And it's like, we're not the problem, right? We're trying to fix this ongoing issue that's caused by another issue, which is, I guess, is politicians. But they're just giving us more and more work, and we're trying to just keep react to that, and that's the headache. So now it's like I'm at the mindset of trying to fix that mental health issue. Obviously, I'm not going to solve it, but I just want to help those who are helping others, because the amount of stress we're dealing with, trying to help someone, and it's like this, we get this feel of lack of purpose now, because the amount of times you put these bad guys in jail and then they get released, and then like it happened in New York, these guys jumped police officers and then they get bail, or I think the charges were dropped or something like that. It's like, what's the point, right? And men need purpose, right? And if you're going to remove that purpose, we got to find another one, right? So I feel like now my purpose is kind of shifted to now helping those who help others. So that's what I'm going to try to do. But back to your question, when it comes to, I know it's a long answer, but my guess is the amount of scrutiny we get on the news, social media. I just don't think people want to deal with the toxic environment on the outside. I just don't think they think it's worth it. I don't blame them. I mean, I'm telling, when people ask me what should I do, I tell them not to. But if they are pushing and wanting to do it, I was like, well, at least get this done and make sure you get, certain mental health training done, in a sense of like your ego. If you're really egotistic, right, this job's not for you, because you're going to fall into those ego traps and you're going to get in trouble. So it's not worth it. So I always tell people, get some life experience first before going in. Like, you can have all the degrees you want, but if you have no life experience, I think you'll fall short in this job, right?
Yeah, big time.
I think, man, that at a service not backing up their members is another thing too, right? I don't know if you saw, but there's a sheriff in Florida, I think, who just released a small video. It was in the news, anyways, and one of his deputy got his cruiser stolen, and the guy who stole the car killed 2 persons. Wow. And the first thing in the press conference that is asked the sheriff is, "What if your deputy would have done better?" And he's like, "You gotta fucking stop here."
Yeah.
He's like, "My deputy has nothing to do with this. The guy who drove the car killed 2 persons, and you're trying to blame the cops." And I think it's totally right. We need to have somewhat of some services, like deputy chief, whatever you want to call it, who back up their guys, because the chief now, in general, are so willing to dig the hole for their own constable, and they're in a place of politics as well, right? Which, right, like, well, we talked about it before, you and I, Jay. Like, the commissioner that we have for the RCMP was so implanted in politics, right? We see it with whatever happened with COVID. Like, cops were used. Like, to me, they were used from what I've seen. Don't get me wrong. And if you're not agreeing, that's totally fine. That's my opinion. But they were used for decisions that were not even placed. And now that we're learning that it's totally illegal, and they're doing. So I think there's that flavor too, right? Like, I wouldn't want to work for. Let me rephrase this. The best place I worked in, my boss were supporting and protecting my ass as well. Right? The shit was coming down from higher up, but it was filtered as well.
Right.
So, which now what we see is, okay, well, we're gonna crap on the lowest person at the bottom, which is usually the street cop, and we won't care, right? And I don't know for you guys, how long you have to be in the street before applying for a specialty?
It all depends, to be honest. I mean, I was, I think in my third year, I was working for a unit called the Net, which is like the neighborhood enforcement team. And our job was to basically just search warrants for guns and drugs, just hammer as many as we can. And the reason why they were created was there were a lot of us people providing source information, but to the the guns and gangs or drug squad and stuff like that. But some of them weren't acting on that information, and then the sources would be complaining. It's like, I gave you info, I want some money or whatever, something in return, whether charges dropped, whatever the case is. So there's the CIs and the handlers were having issues with their sources, so they stopped getting information. The reason why they stopped getting information because no one's acting on it. So the Net was created to act on everything. Whatever information we had in our division, act on it. Sometimes we get jackpot, sometimes nothing, right? Our biggest bust, we had $1 million drug bust. It's just the 6 of us. Every other week, we'd be writing 4 or 5 warrants, but we had $1 million drug bust with a gun. Another bust we did was like 4 guns with drugs and cash. It was really good. And they disbanded us for unknown reason.
You're doing a good job. We're gonna stop that.
Yeah, I'm just gonna say that, and I'm not trying to put down anyone else. They work hard, no doubt, right? I have friends who have continued to on those special positions, but so it all depends. Some guys, and I wasn't this is more of an internal division unit that was created, but then there's like the guns and gangs, hold up, and all that stuff. But and they've kind of ventured off to those units as well, doing good. So, but it's politics, man. That's the frustrating part.
It's interesting. Go ahead, man. Sorry.
No, it's changed so much. Like when I first started in 2006, you had to have minimum 5 years to specialize in anything. You wanted to get into a crime unit, you wanted to get into major crime, or you wanted to get on the ERT team. Minimum 5 years. Just before I was leaving, so that would have been November of 2021. Just before I was leaving, there was a guy who had 8 months on the job, and he had completed the ERT course. Like the guy hasn't even figured out how to do an investigation yet, and he went and did the ERT trial to get onto the team. And I wasn't sure if that's good or not. Like I'm not sure if somebody with 8 months on should be qualified to get onto an ERT team.
Right, and 5 months is usually the average when you should start, and that's usually the time frame when you decide what kind of cop you are at that age, right?
5 years, yeah.
Right, and I mean that guy 8 months on. I don't know if he's ex-JTF or something like that.
No, he wasn't. No,
yeah.
Bro, they don't allow ex-JTF to go faster. They don't. I don't know for you guys, but I know here they don't give a shit what you have as background.
Well,
they don't.
With us, we had a K9 guy who was ex-JTF. Got on the job, blew his hand off. I think he was holding a flashbang while he was doing his JTF training. Blew his hand off. Got on the job. He has like hooks. His training. He's a K9 handler. No issues. Like he does his thing and like extremely good shape, all that stuff, and bit of I love his banter's the best. You can tell he's from like ex-military, But again, I agree with you. Like, everyone should follow kind of everything else, right? Everyone else, right? But some people know people, and some people, they play hockey or like with us, or know golf courses, and they kind of make their way there, right? So.
Well, yeah, that I call it non-familial nepotism. That's alive. That's alive in every police force, right? That seems to be how all the contracts are won, if you want to call it that. Right?
Yeah, here it's 5 years minimum. And the guys, so what's going on with the specialty, unless you know people, like you said, after 5 years, well, the specialty guys just switch into units. They don't go back in the street, right?
Yeah.
So the guys does 7 to 10 years in the street now, which we all know that night shift, like shift work is not healthy. Let's go with that first and foremost. Yeah. It's not good.
I find that's the problem. Like at least with us, like the front lines, the service is backwards. Like with the military, there's the infantry, and then there's everyone that supports the infantry. Yep. With policing, there's the front lines, and it's like they have to support all these other units. It's like they're the ones in the front lines dealing with everything. They're more likely to get injured. They're more likely to deal with complaints, it just goes on. So it's like, how come no one's there to support them? And then when they punish you, they say, you know what, I'm going to put you in the front lines. It's like, I mean, front line should be the more noble position, if anything, but it seems like it's more of a punishment. Yep. So that's the frustrating part. It's like, because it basically puts down all the officers in the front lines. It's like, well, is this punishment? Or, I mean, I think front lines is the most entertaining job, right? Like, out of everything. Now, I haven't done every unit, right, personally, right? So I can't say for certain, but in my opinion, it's just like, you don't know what's going to happen, essentially, right? Every day is a new day and kind of thing. But like, as much as I like enjoy doing the net job, I learned a lot. I learned how to write warrants efficiently and stuff like that. But I got kind of a bit bored because it's just like guns and drugs. Like, can we do something else right now, right? So I like the variety aspect, but that's me. Some guys love that stuff, and by all means, enjoy it, right? But
you were military police for a while, right?
Correct.
So give us your rundown on what's the difference, and I want to ask you a moral and ethical question after that too. So, like, what are the similarities and differences between military police and standard like community policing or like your city policing?
So, as a reserve military police, the way we see it is we're big M, little P, right? The reg force, they're little M, big P. So they'll do a lot more of the policing aspect. We're more of like field military police. So when it comes to dealing with prisoners of war and escorts and things like that, that's our main job in comparison to the reg force. Reg force, they're doing the patrols and things like that around bases, and it's pretty quiet. There's bigger politics in that as well. But like overseas was different, obviously. Like when we were the reg force, the RCR guys, great guys. And when RCR and MPs working together, no one would ever thought they would have to work together, because the RCR guys infantry guys were looking at us like, here come the cops. How are we supposed to trust these guys, right? And then they realized we're actually worse than them because we know the rules, right? So we got along great. Everyone worked out. Everything was fine. But a lot of the reg force MPs, when it came to field stuff, this was our bread and butter. So we're super comfortable in the field. And we named a couple of the reg force MPs glow sticks because they only last a few hours. But and there's always that banter, right? Obviously, we all get along fine. Things are great, obviously. But some guys, be surprised. I got actually top 3 candidate in the POMLIT, which is I did overseas the Police Operation Mentor Liaison Team. It's a long acronym. But here's this reserve MP getting top 3 candidate in a position that's infantry's job, right? So, I got awarded for that. All that is just for the policing aspect of it. From what I've heard from the guys who do the actual patrols and stuff like that, you go into the domestic calls, mostly domestics, drunk driving, things like that for the most part. Living on base, there's not much to do other than drink beer, get into fights, work out, right? Things like that. I lived in Petawawa for a year and change, and it's just like you just watch TV, hang out. There's like nothing else to do.
And it's worse. It's worse in a school base.
Yeah,
right? Borden has a lot.
Sure. Yeah,
it is the school for Air Force, for logistics, for
the MPs. That's the police academy.
Yeah. You have officers as well for it's the Navy basic recruit schools.
Yeah.
So I mean, you're stuck in a base, man. You don't have a car. What do? You get beer, right?
Yeah.
And like just outside of base Borden, which is Angus.
Yeah.
Like the guys go so much at the beer, they have like parking spot for military duty people at the beer store and at LCBO. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Not that we're alcoholics, but it's pretty close to it. Right?
You just haven't admitted it. That's all. So it's big difference than standard beat cop policing.
Yeah, I mean, you'll get more variety, obviously, because it's in the city. There's more people, so you're going to get more different situations, obviously, but more dynamic. But with the base stuff, it's most of it's just domestics, from what the guys have told me. Domestics and impaired fights,
suicide.
Yeah, there's that as well, right?
I remember, man, when I was in Borden, that's a good one. So I was on Pat Platoon down there, Pretzi, if you ever heard about that. But so we were 900 person waiting to be trained, because when Afghanistan blew up, they recruited a shitload of people for support.
Yeah.
And so we're 900 people just waiting to do something. And someone someone had escaped from jail of Aurelia or something around there.
Yeah.
And apparently it was on base. So they just told us that, right? We're in a freaking roll call in the morning, and they're like, well, just be careful. There's a man who's escaped from jail, and apparently he's on base. I'm like, okay. What's the description?
Yeah.
Shave head, white male.
Yeah. Good luck.
Narrowed it down for me. Yeah.
Right. But it's like you said, right? It's the MP school. So every Thursday, Friday, Saturday, they have roadblocks.
Yeah. Try to look for someone. Yeah.
And there's always someone who was showing up on Monday, like, God, I gotta report myself. I got cut for DUI.
Yeah.
I gotta report, and it's just how it is.
Yeah.
Like it's
that was where that was the moral conundrum I was worried about. Like, you guys are, I don't know the military at all, so I'm really ignorant to it, but it stands to feel like it would be difficult if you were a military police, because you kind of have to arrest your own boys.
Yeah.
And I don't know what that punishment would be like, if it was actually criminal or if you were doing that internally. I'm not sure.
So a bit of both, because there's the QRNOs, so it's like the military laws and stuff like that.
Kind of like police orders, I suppose.
Yeah, kind of thing, right? But obviously there's some times where you're going to have to help the guy out, right? If you can, obviously, if he's assaulting his wife, is it because of PTSD? Like, I find like a lot of guys who join the military because they're finding a sense of purpose. Some want to, support Canada, things like that. It's more of a pride ship. Some just go in the military because they don't know what to do in their career. Some just want to find a sense of purpose, right? It's hard to say, because there's some people who join the job, they're just power hungry, right? And they just want to arrest everyone. They don't care. So, there's a lot of factors. But it wouldn't feel good to arrest your own, obviously, but you kind of have to be like the big brother, essentially, and kind of like, you screwed up, you own up to it, here are your mistakes, whatever. Here's your punishment. The military has their way of they're punishing their guys. There's like, there's Club Ed. So basically military jail in Edmonton, I believe it is.
I think it changed, but it used to be Club Ed for sure.
Yeah. So then, so there's, there's that, and they scare you, basic training. If you look at me wrong, you're going to get charged and, you're going to jail, kind of like, okay, you said so, kind of thing. But, so there's that. It's hard to say, right? It all depends on how, I guess the circumstances, right? If you killed your wife, I'm like, okay, you got to go. I'm sorry, right? Can't do any favors on that point, right? But I guess every situation is different for the most part.
Yeah, you have the NIS. Is it NIS or NIC? National Investigating Center, isn't it? Yeah. Which is, I think it's in Ottawa. I'm not quite sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Was that that was a civilian entity that would do investigations?
No, it's MPs.
No. Yeah, it's the MPs. Yeah, they do like the serious investigations, like homicides, things like that. And I think there might be situations where they might get the RCMP involved or the local police, OPP, or whoever. Yeah, provincial police is. I'm not 100%, but.
Well, what was there was one in Halifax where the guy was bringing dope into the port, Shearwater, and I think it's a corporal driving a Hummer H2, which. And let's be honest, it's 20 years ago. Hummers were expensive. Corporal made $50,000, and that was NIC was dealing with this because I was bringing drugs into it from Afghanistan.
Yeah,
and got caught. Right. Oof. Yeah, you better get out of the military now.
Yeah,
and just being dealt at the civilian side, the military side, because it's a double edge, right?
For sure.
Right, like it's the same as police, right? You are dealt internally. And then externally, which is civilian side, but the military has their own jail, their own rule, and this is a difference, right? You won't, if you're the criminal in that case, you're not the one who's going to start yapping in the face of the MP.
Mm-hmm. From what I heard, it's you go and do 2 years in Club Ed, military jail. After that, you serve your time in civilian jail. Yeah, or prison.
That's what the lieutenant colonel in Trenton did. I think that's what he did. The one who was wearing underwears and kills
Colonel Russell Williams.
Yeah. So I think that's what he did 2 years, and then he went to Kingston Penn, and then I don't know, they moved him, but
he won't be getting out anytime soon, that's for sure. I want to take us a little bit different place here. Where before we started recording, Jose, you'd been interviewed before, and I brought
Yes.
this up to you on Larry Payton's podcast that's called Papa Tango Sierra Delta podcast, PTSD. And one of the interesting things that was catching about your interview was perhaps it's your upbringing, you know, being that you were from a pretty wild neighborhood, or your experiences as a kid, but to this point in your career, doing everything you've done, you have not experienced the mental health trauma or the weight of the job, so to speak. And I'm wondering if you have thought on that yourself, and what it is about you, or what skill set do you have that you think you could offer to some people? What is it that you think is keeping you from getting banged down by a really difficult job?
I question myself every day, like, why me? Is this a gift? Is this a curse, kind of thing? Like like a lot of my buddies from overseas, like they're suffering from PTSD, right? And like I come back, I'm like the only one. Like their wives are asking my wife, "How's Jose doing?" And she's like, "He's fine." Like, "How's how's the husband's?" Right? And like they're going through trauma, all this stuff. And I'm just trying to like scratching my head, like, why them and not me, kind of thing. I don't know. I prepped myself a lot before going overseas, and I was kind of like, what to expect. So I was looking at a lot of videos on YouTube, and IEDs and suicide bombers and things like that, and faces of death and stuff like that. Kind of get used to seeing, death essentially, right? And then when you go overseas and you see it, I'm like, okay, that's what I thought I was going to see. There it is. And I guess it helps is you're not humanizing that person as much as you want to. You kind of tuck that away, use that as motivation to kind of do some good, right? Essentially. But I'm trying not to take that back home and bring it to my family or friends, right? So it's hard. I'm always trying to figure out why. And it's like the one podcast you did with Seb. There's the one quote he says, he wants it. He wants that trauma, right? Because he knows he can handle it.
Yeah.
And that resonated with me because it's like, yeah, maybe some people are built where they can hold and withstand a lot more than other people can.
Yeah.
I remember there's one incident overseas. There was a Shura meeting. It's basically a meeting with the elders, and our warrant officer, he was talking to the elders because he's kind of our elder, and I'm kind of his bodyguard. So I'm just kind of watching his six, and then we heard gunfire to our vehicle to our east, and you hear warning shot. So I kind of run down, like, what's going on? I'm thinking, trying to get in positions, coming in fire, and I see this guy bringing this kid in his arms, and I was just red. I was like, did this guy just shoot this kid? I was just like, why? Turns out the kid got shot in the foot, and what happened was he'd fire a warning shot into the hood of the vehicle. I didn't see the vehicle from the angle, and it went through the hood and hit the kid in the foot. Another soldier did some advanced first aid using another vehicle, came by, did first aid on the kid. Kid's not going to lose the foot. He's fine. The MPs came by, investigated, and they questioned us, like, what happened. And I told them flat out, I'm like, listen, the guy who pulled the trigger, I am not a fan of, but he didn't do the wrong thing. He was legit warning shot, all that stuff. The guy who did first aid tried to kill himself twice, and I asked him, like, we took him to our home. He was eating, or not eating, but he was doing a lot of drugs, like heavy drugs, and we're trying to get him clean, things like that. And I questioned him, like, why you, like, what's going on? What is it you're running from? And he says that incident, he thought we were trying to convince him to lie to the MPs. And it's like, no one's lying to MPs. I didn't see what happened. You didn't see what happened. Just tell them what you heard and saw. That's it. And he's like, you guys were trying to manipulate. I'm like, no one said anything to you. We just tell them this is what happened. And for some reason, he took it from a different perspective. And I told him flat out, I was like, the guy who pulled the trigger, I am not a fan of. Right? I mean, we worked, kept it professional, but that was it. And, if he ever needed help, I'd be there, no problem. But, once we landed back in Canada, we went our separate ways, and that was it. But I'm just lost for words as to why that affected him so much and didn't for me or anyone else. So that's the frustrating part, because you're trying to help people and you just can't help your own sometimes, right? So it just seems like those who want help have to be able to be willing to help themselves. And I think from my upbringing, without growing up without a father, I didn't hate my dad. I wish I had one, obviously, growing up, but him leaving kind of made me realize what not to do as a father. So now it's an ego thing that benefits me, where I'm gonna, you know what, I'm gonna do this on my own, and I'm gonna show it and prove it to you that I don't need you anymore, kind of thing. So I don't know if that kind of helped my mindset. So I don't know. And it just, I don't know if my mind is built differently, which it seems like it, but I'm still, every day I question myself why or how. I've looked up videos, and I don't know. It could be just, we're designed to deal with heavy trauma and be able to be pushing through. So I'm always looking for this. Okay, keep pushing. You're fine, right? So I don't know, man. Je ne sais pas.
No, it's, you know what, it is, overall, it's a bit of a mystery.
Yeah.
We had a psychologist on the podcast, and we even asked her, and I've yet to hear any psychologist anywhere. And I love to listen to the literature and watch podcasts, and you know, it's kind of, they don't really know who's going to get it and who isn't going to get it. And so it's funny that you said, am I cursed by this? Is this a curse? I don't know, man. Maybe it is a blessing, but you know, at the same time, you just said it. Maybe it's just that's who you are. You're able to carry trauma, and so you're one of those good support personnel that's always going to be there and never have to worry, right? So,
and that's why I'm choosing the path I'm in now, with the whole breath work and trying to help people with PTSD, because it's like, you know what, I'm rather than thinking of it as a curse, but it's more, maybe it's a gift. So you know what, you've dealt with trauma, so have I. But this is what I've thought of it as, and how do I change my perspective and things like that, right? So so far so good, I guess, right? I mean, who knows, 10 years from now I might just lose my mind. I don't know, right?
Well, I hope not, man. I pray for you that happens, right? I just knocked on my desk here.
Who did you have as a male figure then that you look up to?
So the biggest one, well, there was my older brother, but he did what he could, right? Obviously, my dad left, he was about 18 years old, and that age, you know, you're not gonna be a father kind of thing, right? But he did what he could, and my sister as well helped out. My mom did what she could, but actually, there's our warrant officer in Afghanistan, Gaitan Roberge. I looked at him as a father figure. He was big guy, just jacked, French guy, right? But he was part of the Van Deus. He's actually part of the original Canadian Airborne Regiment before they got disbanded. They went to the Van Deus. But he was very just disciplined and just very motivational, focused a lot on teamwork, things like that. And I always looked up to him. I was always busting his balls. I remember one time overseas, he was like just upset at the Afghan police. You know, they're not doing this. Big, thick French accent. He's like, Tabernacle, they're not doing this and that. These guys are always high. What's going on? And I had a camera on me. We were just like ready to just like laugh at him, because he kind of looks around like, warrant, let me see a happy warrant. And he smiles and I take a photo of it, right? So then I still have that photo, and actually his wife loves that photo, right? I told her the story behind it, and she's like, it's one of her favorite photos because of it. He's passed away. He actually died in Afghanistan, 2008, December 27th. It was the day he died. Got hit with an IED. He left Afghanistan on vacation, HLTA. Came back on the 25th of December. 26th, he came out to our police station in Kandahar province, Panjwai district. 27th, got hit with an IED, just like that, gone. But worst day of my life. I called home, and I was just like, you know, I mean, I was in tears talking to my girlfriend, now wife, but it's just like, he's gone. I was like, oh, it was just rough, because it's like another one is gone now, right? When I had this male role model, now he's gone. Now what, right? Kind of thing. So now it's just like, I don't want to have his death be in vain. So it's like, you know what, keep trying to be a better person and just keep figuring it out, right? So
yeah. Well, I'm sorry for that loss.
Jay, just so you know, HLTA is in the middle of a tour. The forces pay you a trip somewhere.
Yeah.
Short story. It's 2 weeks, and they send you. It's kind of a cool down of 2 weeks, and then you come back.
Yeah, we had 5 weeks, but yeah.
5? Oh,
yeah,
even better.
Yeah.
And yeah, if you have a tour of 9 months, I think, because 6 months you don't have the same. If I'm correct.
Actually, sorry, no, it's 21 days. My apologies. 21 days.
3 weeks. So
that's it for the that's it for your vacation, basically. That's what you're calling it. Is it kind of like it's your vacation?
Yeah. So you're gone, and if you're there for a year, you get 2. So it all depends. But, yeah, for the most part.
Yeah. When we were off camera before we started, we were talking about the T-shirt you're wearing, and that's also your handle on Instagram.
Yes.
Duel Lobos.
Yeah.
And take us through this thing that you're doing, because I think it's awesome, and people don't realize just how powerful breath work is, especially. And I think John and I, we've touched on a lot of different modalities that people can do and the things that we do in order to, get us through rough times. But breath work is one of those incredible and very powerful things. And so how did you get into it, and what are you doing with it? I know that you just briefly touched on it, that you're trying to help people, but you didn't really get into it. So give us the good story about this, because this is really important. I think more people need to be doing this.
So I did in 2020, I believe it was. I went to a ayahuasca retreat. It's a weekend. A friend of mine actually works for OVP now. He asked me to join him for it, right? So I was like, yeah, let's get crazy. Let's go to the Matrix kind of thing, right? So he did. He had a lot of trauma as a kid, and he just wanted support. So I went there for that. Jermaine's his name. Awesome guy. He's doing phenomenal. I love it. So we did the ayahuasca retreat. First night, I didn't experience anything. And to my right, I saw this one female. She was dancing, and then, like about an hour in after taking the medicine, and then I'm like, I'm not getting that. And then to my left, I'm hearing someone screaming, like, what was that? And I'm like, I'm not getting that, right? So I'm just like, kind of, what's going on? Like, is this thing working, right? Kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So I go to the shaman. I'm like, hey, nothing's working. What's going on? Kind of thing. So I take another drink. She's like, just go lie down. So I lie down and pass out. Wake up the next morning. Oh, I purge. So purge is throwing out, essentially, right? And the reason why you want to purge is you want to get rid of all that negativity and out of your system, kind of thing. And there's different methods of purging. Some people fart, some people sweat it out, some people, number 2, like hard. You always carry like a barf bag or barf bucket everywhere you go. Jermaine had a phenomenal, vision. And second night, same thing, but this time I'm like, okay, maybe I got to focus more on me. Drink the ayahuasca, and I had a vision of me kind of like in the complete darkness, but there was like colorful lights just surrounded by, kind of like I was in the middle of the universe kind of thing. And I was just like, okay, what's all this? What's going on, right? So it seems like I'm kind of just over the fence, but not quite over, to see, kind of experience everything. But the next day, I believe it was the next day, we did breathwork session, and it's a lot of like holotropic breathing, but you're taking a lot of deep breaths in and out, and it gets faster and faster. It's about a 25-30 minute session of like back and forth breathing, and then there's like about a 15-20 minute meditation state. And the one point the breathwork facilitator is like, he says, visualize your timeline of everything you've accomplished. And everything was just going through my head, and it's just like Niagara Falls, and I can't open up my eyes. And it's not that I want to open up my eyes, it's just like, what's going on? It's just like this, what's happening? So I'm in this like weird dream state, but I can't wake up from it. And then I can hear everything. And he basically says, now visualize someone you're grateful for. And I just started thinking about my mom, and more. Like I was wearing a toque and it's just soaked. And it was all like tears of joy. Nothing. I wasn't sad or anything like that. And then, you kind of wake out of it, and then I'm just like, what the fuck just happened, right? And I felt like Doctor Strange, where he's like, he finally figures out how to, the whole science and magic kind of thing, and he's like, teach me, right? That's what I felt like. I was like, how do you learn this, right? And then so about dealing with COVID and stuff like that. So I think about 2 years ago is when I did the course to become a breathwork facilitator, and I learned how to do it. And there's a reasoning behind it. I was trying to look up online, and there's several reasoning of how and why. It's like a lot to do with the CO2 that you're exhaling, the nitrogen and the oxygen that's coming in your system. It's essentially that visual where people get that my eyes flash before my eyes before kind of dying kind of thing. We all have DMT in our system, and when you're dreaming, that's that DMT kind of working its magic. So I'm essentially causing a panic attack without the panic. So what your body does during a panic attack is what I'm essentially doing. And then I take you through this guided meditation, and that's how you get that DMT, the dreamlike state. And everything I'm saying, I'm kind of guiding you through this meditation essentially, right? So there's certain words and things like that I use to kind of trigger certain emotions for people. And what I've been doing, I kind of tweaked my version where now I can do that, but now I'm doing more of a motivational. So what I want to do is basically something that you're suffering from. Okay, let's face it head on. Now that you faced it, now let's work on motivating yourself to kind of get out of it and improving yourself, right? Kind of getting out of that rut that you're stuck. And that's the kind of goal I'm trying to do right now. Again, like I said, like, helping those who help others. So there's something that you got stuck with. It sucks. Okay, face it, deal with it. But now let's move on now, right? So that's the kind of avenue I'm kind of pushing towards. So far, I did it with my family. So my mom, when she was 15, her father passed away from leukemia, and she had the vision of that time when he was on his deathbed, and she was next to him, and she was in tears. She basically told me, I was able to see my father again. Thank you so much for that. Right? It's just like it put me to tears. Right? My nephew he suffers from ADHD, like constantly in his head. Undiagnosed, but this is from him. And then I did the breathwork session for like a week. He couldn't get into his head. He was able to sleep properly and things like that. And a friend of mine suffering from epilepsy. I was kind of cautious about doing it because it's like, I'm concerned. I don't want to mess up with your brain or anything like that. Went through it. It was very like slower pace kind of thing, but you can see the emotions coming in from him. And now he's starting to get motivated to kind of, all right, enough with this weakness. Right, I kind of do something with myself, and I'm super happy for him. So I get different, versions of that. And for most people, when I do the sessions with them, I don't ask them what's bothering them. That's for them to tell me if they want to. That's fine. But I kind of leave it with them, and I tell them, okay, you want me to come back? Let me know, and that's it. Leave it at that. That's something for them they have to face, right? I can't face their fight for them, right? They have to figure that out.
Yeah. Very, very cool. And have you done a lot of research on breathwork and on breathing?
Yeah, there's different methods, like the Wim Hof. Like I want to do that course.
Yeah, it's incredible. I do Wim Hof breathing, and it's pretty cool.
Like that guy, he's
okay, guys. You have to explain what it is though, because you two understand. I have no idea what the hell that is.
Sure. So, do you want to explain it, Jose?
Yeah. I mean, whatever I miss, add to it, obviously. But
sure.
He's the Iceman, right? He holds several records climbing Mount Everest in shorts. Yeah. He's swam. I think it's about 100 meters or 50 meters in the Arctic Circle. He's
under the ice.
Under the ice, right?
Yeah.
He's ran I think half or full marathon in barefoot, or what's it? Yeah, I think it was barefoot in shorts.
He almost lost a foot too, I think.
Yes, that's right. And he
healed it with breathing.
That's right. And he injected himself with some sort of bacteria.
E. coli.
Yes. And the doctors called him, called BS. So he did it, it went out of his system. He's like, I can teach anyone to do it. I think he got like 10 or 11 random people, taught them in a week or two, whatever it was. And they were able to do it. And I was like, what the hell? He encased himself in ice. He's like, has all these wires connected to him. And scientists and doctors like, how is this guy doing it? Right, kind of thing. So his story is incredible. I highly recommend Wim Hof. Like why and how he discovered it was his wife killed herself. I think they had 3 or 4 kids. And for him to stop thinking about his depression and all that, he just basically dove into ice cold lake just to kind of give himself some peace and quiet from his head. And from there, he just discovered, hey, if I do this, I get this, right? So incredible story. I mean, that guy is supernatural for sure.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And just to add to that, John, just because you don't know, essentially Wim Hof breathing is probably just like a shorter version of the holotropic breathing that you're doing, right? And it's as simple as like it's controlled hyperventilation. So you're just breathing in really hard, breathing out really hard. And you do that a series of times. And Wim Hof, it's like 30 or 40.
Mhm.
And then you exhale and hold your breath. And it's incredible. You know, when I haven't been practicing it steadily, but when I was doing it steadily, I got up to being able to hold my breath for 4.5 minutes.
Oh, wow. Nice.
Yeah. And it's incredible the things that you get into like a bit of a meditative state while you're doing that. And you don't even recognize that there's an environment around you. It's a really neat thing. And have you read James Nestor's book called Breath?
No.
So since you're a breath facilitator, I highly recommend that you do, even if you get the audiobook. And John, I'll get my copy and I'll send it to you.
Is it in French? No.
No, sorry. Yeah, I'll translate it and I'll write it for you.
Okay.
Definitely, definitely recommend it. Probably one of the best books on breathing. James Nestor, I think he's a journalist, and he studied breathing for years after he was covering those deep divers, those free divers. You know how people free dive and go down like 105 meters down or whatever? He was covering a free diving event, and he got hooked on how people are able to breathe and all of the benefits that they find. These people that are holding their breath end up getting all of these downstream effects on their body that are really good and healthy.
Right.
And the reason why I think this is important, and my hat's off to you for doing this, especially because you're in law enforcement, is it helps to soothe the system. It really is a stress reliever. John, you and I both know this, right? From having to deal with our own stuff, that if you don't have your breathing under control, you could be sitting around all day long doing like basically shallow breathing as though you're in panic mode all day long.
Mm-hmm.
So then you're stuck in like a stress mode all the time, right?
Right. And like the Navy SEALs, they do a lot of the box breathing, right? So every time you're in a high stress situation, box breathe. I don't know if you guys are aware of it, but it's like 4 seconds in, hold 4 seconds, exhale 4 seconds, hold 4 seconds. And that kind of brings you back down, right? So that's a simple, more simpler method. But
now, I'm curious about one thing, and I'll take your opinion on it if you want to share it.
Sure.
So we were talking about that Iceman, right? Where you said, it's a supernatural thing, but you also said few minutes prior that he taught the same thing to 10, 12 person who were able to do it.
Yeah.
So would you say that because of a society how it is nowadays, we are skipping on a lot of things that the human can do?
100%. 100%. I think we need to fall back on like what our ancestors went through, right? And it seems like we've gone so far away from what we've been designed for, is just survival, right? So now everyone's like enjoys the materialism world, right? And I think there needs to be less of that, because you'll never feed that ego of I want. Because you buy a Lamborghini, after 6 months, like I wanted something else. Yeah. Right? So it's this constant chase for this dragon, right? So it's become an addiction. So I don't think we need to. I enjoy the outdoors and camping, things like that, and I feel like completely reset after a camping trip. It's just like, I just want to kind of go back and do whatever it is I'm trying to go after. So whether it's more jiu-jitsu, with my kids, whatever the case is, right? I'm just more motivated to do more now, right? So I think that's we need to fall back more on, and just this dependency on everything else, social media, cell phones. Just like I think we need to kind of move away from that, not completely, but just kind of reset once in a while, right? So.
Yeah, and it's on medication as well, right? Do you talk about ayahuasca, right? And it's interesting because I called VAC this week, and I was like, okay, I'm on a mindfulness course / microdosing, right?
Yeah.
And it's, plant medicine has been in the world for how long? Like
as long as humanity has been
forever.
Able to experiment.
Yeah, right? Exactly, right? Yeah. So now, how long medication has been on? 125 years, give it a take.
Yeah,
right. And I was like, well, there's studies that microdosing is giving some good lead.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we cannot do that. So what that made me realize is they had no problem giving me 18 different medication the first year I got diagnosed, but putting me in a mindfulness course, and I paid my own the mushroom and capsule.
Yeah,
is a no-go. It's interesting, right? But they're gonna give me 90 grams of weed monthly. Right, so I don't drink.
Yeah,
which is
so funny. Yeah,
it doesn't make sense, right? But it's the government, right? Not the same way.
I'm pretty sure the people who are making that decision, if you gave them some, some shrooms, they'd be like, you know what, maybe he was right. I guarantee you, right? But,
Yeah.
But I think so with ayahuasca, so ayahuasca is about 3-4 hours, 5 hours, depending how much you consume. There's I don't know if you guys ever heard of iboga or iboga.
Yep.
That's like 36 hours. And that is like considered like the grandfather of all medicine, plant medicine. And my buddy Jermaine, he's done it several times, and he's like Jermaine 2.0. Like the amount of stories when the last couple of years, like when people hear that the universe is talking to you, I always thought that was BS. The last couple of years, that's when I think the universe is talking to me. With him, the universe is screaming at him, and he's just taking all the signs and just eating it all up and following that path, and he's just keeps elevating, and I'm so proud of him. Like he just keeps getting better and better.
We're gonna have him on the podcast now. Like, I mean, he needs to come to
ask him if he wants to, but he he's such a good dude, man. Oh, he's such an awesome guy.
Did you develop that spirituality before or after the ayahuasca ceremony, or had you already after?
So I've never been religious. I've always been spiritual. My views with religion, right? It just seems like everyone has their version. And I try to get the bits of whatever works, kind of thing. But it's like, did God create man, or did God create man, or man create God, with the books and stuff like that? So it's like the Book of Eli. It's just this power grab. Is that involved? I don't know, right? But to me, it's just as long as like morally, as I'm following my moral compass, I think for the most part I'll be in good spirits. But ever since the ayahuasca, now it's like been more and more spiritual. And my last session was in September of ayahuasca, but I felt like extremely content, where it's like, I don't need this anymore. At least, who knows, maybe next year I might need it. But I felt content, and that's when I decided to go with the two wolves, right? Because I've always been fascinated with wolves, and the tale of two wolves stories always resonated with me, because we always had at least two options what to do, right? So it's like feeding that right wolf is the best analogy I can use for living the right life, right? Just don't fall into that ego trap. Don't fill yourself with hate and all that stuff, right? Just always look at the positive things in life, right?
Yeah. Are you able to tell the story of the tale of the two wolves? Do you have that one well? Because you basically got to that crossroads on your own when you were a kid. But you mentioned that just a little while ago in your story. So are you able to tell that story for the listeners? Because I think it's a pretty good story, even in your own words.
Yeah. So it's so I'll just read it here. It basically says the tale of two words, so there's one version that a lot of people are familiar with. So it's like an old Cherokee told his grandson, "My son, there's a battle between two wolves inside us all. One is evil, is anger, jealousy, greed, resentment, inferiority, lies, and ego. The other is good, it is joy, peace, love, hope, humility, kindness, empathy, and truth." The boy thought about it and asked grandfather, "Which wolf wins?" The old man quietly replied, "The one you feed." Right. So I think that's just it, right? If you feed the wrong ego, and it's just like, it comes to anything, right? Like people, for example, people for hatred for police, right? If you keep, no matter what view you see the police, you always see them in a negative aspect, right? And that you're feeding that wolf essentially, right? So, there's a great analogy I actually heard the other day where it's like, so I'll ask you, Jay, how many red cars did you see today?
Can't even tell you. I don't know.
If I incentivized it and said, for every red car you see, I'll give you $50, how many red cars are you going to see?
Every single one.
Right. Yeah. So no matter what's thrown at you, you're always going to see it from that perspective, right? Because you just incentivize it, right? So people need to kind of unlock and escape from that mindset and just see different perspectives, right? So
two sides of the sword.
Yeah, right. There's always a bias built into the negativity that you see in the world,
right?
And, like, even if you wanted to dissect that analogy even farther, and I've seen you posting a lot of it on your Instagram stuff, and I really like it because it really does. There's proof in this that's actually true. Mm-hmm. You could just think about it yourself. If you learn to develop a positive mindset, it's like all of a sudden the things in your life start lining up properly.
Yeah.
Whereas, if you wake up every single day and the first thing you do is remember all of the stuff that happened to you in your life in the past, you're just throwing your past in front of you, and you're reliving all the negative stuff in your life. and over and on you go forever.
Absolutely.
And you can break out of this with mindfulness and with having a positive mindset by literally intentionally doing that. And that's one of the key takeaways to that thing is, yeah, you're going to feed the negative wolf and you're going to become that.
Absolutely, right? It's like the whole Darth Vader Star Wars thing, right? Like if you keep feeding that, it'll grow and get worse.
I think but I think what you just said, what you define, is as well the definition of PTSD as it is, right? Because you're stuck in the past, you're not present, and you're fearful of the future,
right?
Because you live in the past,
right? Yeah.
Which is exactly what you explained, right? Obviously, in the 5 minutes words, but in that's so. If you don't live in this, but it comes as well with making peace with things, right? You need to make peace, and I think the two wolf is the same thing that we hear in different aspect with the angel and the demon on your shoulder, or whatever you want to call that. And I'm sure there's other religion who will explain it differently. But
yeah, there's several different versions of it. I mean, I just always been fascinated with wolves. So when I found out that story, I was like, oh, like what a great story, kind of thing, right? So
yeah. No, it's perfect.
Well, you have to see it to believe it. That's the problem. It's almost impossible to sell to somebody unless they discover it themselves, right? You can talk to somebody till they're blue in the face. Because it sounds like I know everybody says woo woo. It sounds like it's like voodoo or magic or witchcraft, like so what you're telling me is I can say nice things in my head about myself. I could use my own internal voice, that weird thing that we do where we narrate everything. And if I can take control of that narration and I can set some intention and say kind things about myself and empower about myself, that I can positively change my life. And people just look at you like you're an idiot. Like, we don't carry around voodoo dolls stabbing people in to make them hurt. But until you try it, it literally is true. And that's the problem, right?
For sure. Like there's some people who just want to wake up and find problems everywhere, right? And it's easy, right? But there's other people who find solutions everywhere, right? That's easy for them, right? So, I mean, obviously balance is key. You don't want to be naive and always think there's solutions to everything, right? But you have to just look at lemons to lemonade, right? So it just comes down to mindset, and if once you start in that rut, it just gets deeper and deeper and deeper, and sometimes it's hard to dig your way out. And a lot of victim mentality, right? Like I deal with a lot of people with like I've done a few social experiments on the job, and when you're dealing with people with mental health, it just seems like they have a different perspective. Like, I mean, I don't want to get political, but it just seems like people on the left have always been more of a victim mentality as opposed to people on the right, more of a victor mentality. Now, obviously, there's a spectrum, right? So, dealing with a lot of people with mental health issues, I've always asked them, like, when it comes to voting, who they vote for, right? And a lot of just on the left, right? Like, so I'm like, is there a correlation people on the left and mental health? Like, what's going on, right? And like some of my army buddies, they're dealing with mental health and they're very right wing, right? So, but it just, what it is there's some people, this one person I asked, and like he says he's very right wing kind of thing, but he says he knows he has mental health issues, but he's like, I'm not a victim. So he's aware of it, but he's trying to fix it. And like, he doesn't want to be labeled as weak or anything like that, right? So I'm like, okay, so I'm trying to figure out what's that link, right? Like, I'm no doctor, obviously, but I'm always kind of curious and thinking, like, why is this happening, right? Like I said, I'm just naturally curious, so I'm always been digging, trying to figure it out. And it just seems like when you have that victim mentality, it just keeps worse and worse and worse. And some people who deal with mental health, it's like, you ask them, hey, how's it going? And then like, what's wrong? Oh, my doctor gave me this. I'm suffering from this. I'm suffering from that. They keep going on and on and on. It's just like, okay, well, hold on. What's the solution now? Why I take this meds, I take this meds, I take this. It's like, okay, maybe there's more to it. Maybe you need something else. I don't know, right? But I'm no doctor, but it just seems like if they just change your mindset, maybe things will get better for them. I don't know, but it just seems like there's a missing link that everyone's trying to figure out potentially.
Well, essentially that, I'm not sure if you've gone through therapy other than maybe just as a way to keep yourself healthy. But mostly people that end up with PTSD, you do mostly talk therapy. Right? And the funny thing about talk therapy is you've got a psychologist who is kind of just getting you to say the right words to yourself. in so doing, and John just said it, right? Like PTSD is this thing where you're overcome by something that happened in the past that's no longer happening to you, yet it feels ever present.
Right. Yeah.
And then it makes you afraid of the future because you feel like you're going to be stuck in this thing forever, right? So that you're constantly going from past to future, and never sitting with yourself in the present moment, realizing you're safe.
Right.
And the funny thing about this whole positivity and thinking the right way that you're talking about, but that's just what the psychologist gets you to do.
Right.
They train you to talk to yourself properly, to bring yourself to a mindful state, and to get yourself to a present moment by recognizing things around you, and then they create little, they give you little modalities and tools.
Right.
And it's all about talking. It's all about talking to yourself in your own mind, right? And it's a powerful and incredible tool that people can learn how to do.
And that's a valid point, because it's like, I remember when the wives from the guys I served overseas with, they were asking my wife, like, how's Jose doing? Like, what's the secret, kind of thing. And she's like, oh, he talks about it. So I don't know if that's like, rather than bottling it up, I'm letting it out. So I don't know if that's the reason why I'm not suffering as much as they are. When she asked them, like, what about your husbands? And like, they don't talk about any of it. And it's just like, it's like, maybe that's a problem. When I'm with them, we're always talking about what we did and all the stupid stuff we've done and stuff like that, right? And all the fun we've had. And they enjoy every year, like Mormons, they always meet up with a few guys, and it's like they always enjoy it, because it's like, I guess they kind of release all that thought process, right? So which is why I always kind of make time for them, right? Because if they just need an ear, then, all right, let her rip, right? I mean, right? So I mean, who knows? I mean, it's like there's that study. I don't want to say it's study, but there was a story where two twins, same environment, grew up, and father was a drunk or something like that. And one became a businessman, another became a homeless person. And when they were asked why, and they gave the answer, my father was a drunk. So it's like two exact same scenarios, right? Best situation where, one just saw it one way and the other saw it the other, right?
Yeah. You have the choice. You have the choice to see the glass half empty or half full, right? And it comes down to the same. I just want to bring up, because we're getting further as we get, and there's something that was said 10 minutes ago by Jay, and it's a term that's been used more and more, and it's the woo-woo thing. Right? Now I find that we use that term to protect ourselves, to not sound crazy. But if you believe in a white man wearing a white robe fucking being God, it's woo-woo as well, right? It's just a different term that we use for spirituality, right? I cannot say that word, but it's in French it would be great. But like, should we be ashamed of believing? I don't think we should be ashamed of believing those things, but I think, and I've heard it, not from just you guys, I've heard it a lot that, woo-woo, it's growth. It's a different type of growth, right? And it's making peace with things, and maybe seeing things differently. Because now they're not accepted in our society, but those things, woo-woo, were accepted for, like we said earlier, right? Millennia. So I don't know why there's such a we're putting such an accent to it of the woo.
So I mean, it could be a balance, because we've evolved from living in caves to where we are now, right? So it's like, it seems like we're kind of turning our backs to our ancestors who went through all that woo-woo stuff, and now it seems like we're kind of going back to it. And it's just like, well, I'm not regressing, I'm actually progressing. So it could be that internal argument that people are having, right? They don't want to believe what our ancestors did was actually working, which is how we got to this point where we are in lives, right? So,
but are we progressing? Because when we were in a cave, we were attacking at our other tribes, and now we're pushing buttons to just throw fucking missile and stay at home. And the people who actually live in North America has no fucking idea what's going on in the world. So are we regressing or progressing?
It's hard to say. I mean, it seems like there's a lot of people who are still, like, I guess, stuck in the matrix, as some people would say. But but then there's some people who are woken up and realize, okay, like, the media's manipulating my mindset. The government's taking advantage of us. There's a lot of factors that we could be can be involved in making us regress, right?
Yeah.
But then it seems like there's some more and more people are starting to wake up and realize, you know what, enough's enough, right? So who knows? I just can't wait to see the end of this movie, see how it goes.
Well, I mean, I'm just
God,
thinking
I
about
don't
this.
know when this end is going to happen. Yeah, it should be interesting.
But like we talked about, there's two sides of a sword, right? Like, and I don't know for you guys, but I know since I'm young, we were born and raised as Russia is the bad guy, US is the good guy, right? The red, the blue, whatever you want to call it, and it's always been a division, and everything we're going to look into it. I don't know if you had the chance to quickly look at the Tucker Carlson today.
No, not yet.
Just released the interview with Putin.
Yeah.
And
Putin? Did you just call Vladimir Putin?
For the one who just listened to it, I'm showing him a finger.
Vladimir fries of gravy.
Yeah.
So
skirts
and vodka.
And Jay will disappear tomorrow because he just insulted fucking Putin.
John will be no longer here. Right?
It is now from now on the Muninn show. So anyhow, but it was very interesting because Tucker asked him, he's like, why don't you release the journalist? He was just a kid, right? He's like, you should release him. And he's like, that's the perspective you have. He's like, he had stolen data of our military.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, yeah, that's a good reason why he's locked up.
Yeah.
Right. Like we've seen the same with the Ukraine, where they locked up all his opponent for politics. Right.
Yeah.
So I think sometimes we forget that there's two sides.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right. And I mean, you're mentioning it. You're right. There's a right and there's a left side. But I think that there's winner on both sides quite often. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And same as like, it's easy to just see the bad guys in the cops world. There's good cops as well.
For sure. Yeah.
And I mean, we all know there's roughly a percentage of 20 to 30% of bad cops, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it seems to be a kind of level around it.
Yeah.
But there's also criminal, which like we talked earlier, and I was kind of rolling my mind into it today just for the fun of it. But we have now a platform. We give a platform to criminal. To a different level, right? Like you have TikToks now that you can look. The guy's like, well, when I was in jail, this is how we passed the drug and so on. And they have like millions of followers, and now they're making millions of dollars out of it. Yeah. Meanwhile, the cop, they're looking to hang them.
Yeah.
Right. Which is only one side of what we see.
Yeah.
Right. Or that is showed, I guess. Or shown. So. Are we sometimes missing things, right? The same as the breath work, right? If you would ask me if it works, my parents used it as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
So when my psychologist said, you're going to do the box thing, I was like, nope. No. It's been used since I'm 4 years old. No, it's not working. Yeah. Now I'm interested by what you're doing, by all means, because I have never heard that part, right? But if you give me that normal box of breathing aspect, I'm not doing this. I'm not wasting my time.
Yeah.
So are we forgetting to actually listen to the other side at times?
Yeah. Right? I think so. I mean, if you're looking from the Russians' perspective, like ever since World War II, they were told, okay, don't cross this line. And then you see all these bases just surrounding. I mean, it looks like the U.S. is getting ready to attack Russia, right? All the bases they have around Russia, essentially.
Yeah.
But then there's a good podcast, Vigilance Elite, I think it's called.
Yeah.
Ryan something Ryan. I can't remember his name, but he's ex-Navy SEAL, CIA guy.
The John Ryan show, you mean?
John Ryan.
Yeah.
So he basically asked a Green Beret guy, I think it was, he's like, are we the bad guys kind of thing? Like, what's going on kind of thing? And it's just like, it's a good question to ask, right? Because like, here are the things you're told, you're the good guy. And then all of a sudden, all these things are happening. It's like, well, now he's looking at a different perspective, right? So,
but like, I mean, I'll go with this, right? I'll put it that way. Born in Quebec, where English people are bad.
Yeah.
That's how I was raised.
Yeah.
Now I'm speaking English with sitting with you.
That's the wolf that you fed. Like, you're going back to what Jose was saying, right? That's just the bias that you were fed. If you want to take, you have the duality of sort of every opinion.
Mm-hmm.
But I had to open myself to that other opinion, because as a kid, you don't know any better.
Right.
And
that one wolf is spoon fed, right? You don't have a choice in the matter at that point.
In that case, yeah. And I mean, it was not only fed at home, it was fed at school. Right.
Yeah.
And I laugh saying it because now I'm married to an English woman. But at lunchtime, we were in a private school walking to the English school, St. Patrick's High School, to get into fights with the Anglos. Right. And I mean, the military is not any better. The last boot camp exercise you do is you attack the Anglos and they attack the French. Right. So it's been there. Right.
Yeah.
But I'm just giving you that as an example. I want to go to, I don't know if you have friends who are Russian. I do. They're fantastic people.
Yeah.
Right. I love them.
Yeah.
I would love to go see Russia. I mean, there's different things than here, same as I like to visit countries our countries, right? Our own country right now, where every province has their own culture, technically. So I think by being overly proud, right, which you spoke about, we're closing our eyes on a lot of opportunities and cultures in general.
Yeah. And that's like, I would love to travel the world. Like my idea of vacation is I gotta explore, have some sort of adventure, sit on the beach. Like I can do that for a day. After that, I'm losing my mind. Like I always want to go to North Korea. People are like, why? Because when I come back, you're gonna be asking me, what was it like? And that's why, right? So it's things like that, right? Yeah, I want to go to Russia, Japan, Antarctica, right? Just all these places, right?
And you can go to Antarctica. It's a freaking lie that we're not allowed.
Really?
There's actually tours. Like there's two companies who do tours on the same show of Sean Ryan. Actually, they're speaking about it.
Oh yes, that's right. Yeah.
Episode 93, I think it was, or something like this. But and we're gonna have to put that in the links now. But but that's what the guy was saying. He's like, you are allowed. There's just place that you cannot go.
Yeah.
But it's the same for every country as well. There's place in every country you're not allowed to step in. So why not?
Well, yeah, and it's funny the way that you guys are talking. It's kind of just this repeating theme. Is Russia bad? Well, it's bad because they tell us it is, right?
Right.
Is the United States the savior of the entire world? I don't know. I don't know, because there's like Sean Ryan's an American Navy SEAL questioning, are we the good guy or the bad guy?
Yeah.
Like, are we pretending and using psyops to tell the whole world that we're good? Meanwhile, what we're doing is we're secretly placing ourselves everywhere,
right? And
taking advantage of natural resources,
right,
in the name of global protection.
Yeah.
You know, and so I don't even know what the heck is true anymore, because it's difficult to not have a bias. It's difficult to turn any kind of social media platform on and know that you're getting the truth anymore.
Right. It's like when the collapse of the whole Afghanistan thing that happened 2-3 years ago, like, it's like everything that we worked for is just gone now, right? And like we have our interpreter who lives in Canada now. He was pretty upset because he's like, he was very much in favor of us being there, and he says, you guys done so much, kind of thing. And he's like, no, all that is gone. He's like, he's so upset about it, and it's just like, that's his perspective from an Afghan. And he, you know, after everything happening, people were asking me, how do you feel about it? I'm like, I feel like everything we worked for is just gone, right? Everyone that's died, it's like now everything's in vain. So that's the frustrating part out of it, right? So then it kind of made me change my perspective, where it's like, you know what? It seems like people need to learn how to deal with their own problems. So, you know, Canada, US, all these countries have had civil wars. They need to deal with their own problems and figured it out, right? And if they want out, then they have to either, you know, flee or fix the problem in-house, right? And I mean, there's a time and place where you should probably intervene. If I'm hearing a neighbor screaming for help, I'm not gonna like, oh, that's your problem, you figure it out, right? But there's a time and place, but it just seems like it's so political. And like, I mean, the amount of opium that was happening over there, that increased ever since, you know, the invasion of Afghanistan, right? So it's like, why are we here? Kind of, so it makes you question everything, right? So
yeah.
But that's a cover. I mean, I'm not gonna say it's a cover up, but okay. So let's just for the fun of it.
Sure.
Let's do a little questioning aspect. If you don't want to go through your trauma aspect, what do? There's a lot of guys who will do drugs, alcohol, sex addiction, whatever, gambling. We can keep on going, working more, and so on and so forth, right? Well, we're kind of doing the same, and I'm gonna put it that way. Okay, so we have a lot of issues in Canada. I think we have tons of issues, and it's not new. It's we have even more in the past 8 years, but it's been going on for a while. But instead, what we're focusing on right now is helping Ukraine. What we're focusing on is sending people in Iraq. What we're focusing on is sending people in Africa, and so on and so forth, or going to UK to, train people from Ukraine. Meanwhile, our problem is not being dealt with, but I see it as an avoidance, right? If I'm very busy over there, I will not think about what's going on here, right? I kind of see it that way. And I'm not saying this, the guys and the gals who are serving, thank you. Like, I have my hat to you guys.
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
And it's not about you I'm talking about.
Sure.
It's the top of the fucking pyramids who decide to do this. But right, if I put in the news days after days, well, there's a lot of war there and so on and so forth, we don't show what's going on in Halifax, that there's tent camp right now of soldier. I cannot even afford to live in an apartment.
Yep.
Right. That the PLD, which is a life expectancy or whatever the cost that you receive on top of your salary and so on and so on. It's not enough, right? It's the same. I'll push it further. Ottawa is the neutral zone for the PLD for the cost of it, and they base themselves on everyone who served there. Now, when you look at it, 70% of people who lives there are officers, which the salary is usually $25,000 to $30,000 more than a soldier, a private, corporal, and so on. So you get nothing. Now, a townhouse in Ottawa is $800,000, right? Which in Toronto is probably at $1.5 million now. But Toronto received $1,500, right? But if we don't talk about it because we're so busy about whatever's going on in somewhere else, we won't fix what's going on here. So I see it as the same issue. And like what you said, Jay, it's a cycle, right? It's the same everywhere. It works. So why don't we reproduce it, right? And I mean, speaking about US or Russia, I'd be curious to see the number of years that Russia was not in conflict, and the same as US. I think US has 22 years since it exists that has not been in conflict.
Right.
It tells a lot too.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? Like, you're not at peace. If you're constantly in conflict, there's no peace there. Now, I'm not saying that Russia is at peace, right? But we need to compare apples with apples.
For sure. It's like, the way I see it, it's like there's the left wing, the right wing. It's the same bird right above you and just shits on everyone down below them, right? That's the way I see it.
Cash, call the front desk, please. BC chat home, call the front desk.
But I think that's the problem. It's like there's a good meme where it shows a king on top of some sort of altar or on his castle. He says, you get the pitchforkers to fight against the torturers, right? And they'll be so busy fighting each other, they're not going to forget about who's actually causing all the problems, right? And I think that's the biggest problem, right? But the media has the influence on that, social media, like politicians, and I think that's the problem, right? People need to stop falling for the same trick that it's like, the magician uses the distraction, right? Meanwhile, they're doing their trick, right?
Same as the criminal.
Yeah, exactly, right? And like, back to the judges, right? It's like it seems like they've hired a lot of what's the word I'm looking for?
Assholes. Oh, sorry.
Activists as opposed to judges, right? So
like
it's like
progressive judges.
Yeah, and it's just like they're supposed to look at being unbiased and look at the evidence, and this says whatever, and kind of follow whatever the evidence is shown. And then the debate happens between the Crown and the defense, and they argue or debate about this is what the evidence should say and this is what it does, etc. But it just seems like they just become so much about activism. It's just like, you put these guys in jail, you try to, and they get released. It's like, what's going on here, right? So I mean, I remember one time we arrested this guy after doing a search warrant, put him in jail. We went to the courthouse to make sure he didn't get bail, and we were there to show the Crown, like, we're here. If they need us on the stand, we're going to go on the stand. The justice of the peace looked at us. It's like, oh, clearly the officers are going to be here watching him, right? So I should just give him his bail, and they'll be able to watch him then. I was like, well, we can't watch him. So, short-staffed that we're here to make sure he stays in jail, so we don't have to watch him and watch on other bad guys. But it bit us in the butt, right? So.
Well, and then what you guys are discussing is sort of why we're in a place now where the public is lost its faith in the police.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. And I don't know that, you can talk about the conspiracy theory as to why, but it doesn't take a rocket scientist to see You know, you turn on the news, and the only thing that they ever show, the only thing they ever air is when one cop makes a mistake. Especially, and rightfully, these news stories should have some time. If a police officer makes a really grievous error and kills somebody, okay.
For sure.
But for every one time that occurs, there's 100 times that we're out there saving people's lives.
People forget about that, right?
That we're being shot at and spit on, and people are pulling knives on us, and you're consoling people for the loss of their loved ones, and you're stripping dead body parts up off of highways, and you're doing all this stuff. And then the one time out of 100 or more taints it for everything. And then you get this bias. Like I said, you get this thing that's feeding everybody's bad wolf, and everybody looks at us and says, oh, screw the police. The police are the bad problem. We're not the problem.
Yeah.
We have problems, right? Everybody, every entity, every large corporation has problems, but we're not the problem. We're the problem solvers. And what's going on is the media is portraying us as evil for whatever reason. Numbers, you know,
it bleeds, it leads.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And so it's unfortunate because you can't get people to realize that. You know, they almost become bigots.
Yeah, and I remember years ago, I was going to a call, and I'm in the elevator, and there's a kid, maybe 3 years old, and kind of waving at him, how's it going? And the mom's like, Mommy, why is the police here to kill me? I was like, that's taught. Hatred's taught, right? It's like, like there's no way that kid at that age knows about that, right?
Yeah.
So the media, whoever's around him, is influencing him, right? And now that kid is going to grow up thinking, well, that's the wolf I got to feed, right? Because that's what I was so used to eating, right?
Yeah.
So that's sad, right?
I had the same here. 3 kids did a 911, and just to make a joke, but they're under 14 years old. Who cares, right? We just need to make sure you're safe. They did not open the door for 2 hours, but we have to stay there until and the neighbor comes by and he's like, "You're intimidating." I'm like, "Doing what?" I'm 5'7", I have a fucking weird accent in Alberta. Like, what am I doing wrong, right? And he's like, "Well, you're white."
Got the mood lighting going on.
I was going.
Yeah, you still look fine. It's all good, Jose.
Sweet.
But yeah, like it was the same thing, and I kind of left sad, I guess, somehow, right? Because I'm like, I'm here to make sure you're safe. What you're telling me is I'm a white male, and I'm a cop, and I'm a bad person.
Yeah.
Oh well. Is there accountability to be done as well, right? And I think that's the point. If they're like what you're saying, Jay, if we're willing to show one side, we need to be willing to show the other side.
For sure.
Right?
And I'm trying to figure out the chess move. Like if the police management, if they're doing this on purpose because that's their chess move, right? And then the media is trying to do their chess move, and politicians are trying to use us as pawns, like. Because all the politicians want to do is just get reelected, essentially, right? That's their only motive, right? So I'm just trying to figure out from a bird's eye view, like what's going on here. So that's the frustrating part, because I'm just trying to do my job. I don't want to get into politics. Someone calls police because they need help, I'm willing to help. What do you need? I'll get that for you. But it's like this ongoing battle. It's just like internally and externally, of just like it's an uphill battle just to try to provide someone help that they need, right? And I've had friends who on the job who've called EFAP, and that's like our police line where cops can call and say, hey, I need help with whatever stress they're dealing with, things like that. I can't remember what the acronym stands for.
EAP, like Employee Assistance Program, kind of like that. Yeah.
And they feel like just a number, right? So they're like, hey, can I close your file so that you're good? And meanwhile, it's like, no, I'm just like, it's I need more help, kind of thing, right? Obviously not all, because I've spoken to others who says they've had a phenomenal experience, right? It's hard to say, but it just seems like, they keep pushing wellness and mental health and things like that. And it just seems like it's just on paper, because when there's officers who are suffering from PTSD, it's like who need the help. It seems like they're kind of had their backs turned towards them. And then there's others who seems like they don't need it. Not to say they don't, but it just seems like they're given everything they need. And it's just like
pick and choose.
Yeah, it's frustrating, because it's like they can't argue that if they need help or not, or mental health, or if they're suffering PTSD, who's to say they don't, right? So that's the frustrating part. I get it from management's perspective, but how do you distinguish who's more important than the other, right? So it's fun. Like like you said before earlier, like yeah, I train jiu-jitsu, and the amount of health benefits to it is like it's so relieving. Like I'll have a bad day, whatever, someone talking, annoy me, because of whatever. I didn't want to fall under the ego trap, right? They're trying to bait you kind of thing for the camera. But you go and roll and have a session in jiu-jitsu, and just like you forgot exactly what you were just upset about, right? And you get all that stress and tension out of your system. And then not only that, but just using Brazilian jiu-jitsu as a defense mechanism for controlling suspects. I mean, they're struggling. I'm just kind of working around them and not breaking a sweat. And after 30 seconds, they're exhausted, and I'm still working, right? So I highly recommend everyone should be using Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. My wife, she's on the job and she trains it. She loves it too. It's such a great workout, and just whatever stress you were thinking about, it's out the door. You don't even care about it anymore.
Yeah, I was about to say to you, because we're at about an hour and a half here, and we try not to go for like hours and hours.
Yeah,
he tries.
We try. We had a rule like we're gonna do 1 hour show. Well, that never happens. But Jose, you've been in the law enforcement game for a long time. So I know this kind of puts you on the spot, but give us take your time. Give us your words of advice, especially for those that are watching, that are in the military, that are in the police. You've lived, and I know this from following you for a while. You've lived a bit of a stoic life. You follow certain stoic tenets, and you have a real deep spirituality, and you're connected in all these ways, and you've managed to really keep a rock solid mentality. So give some people some advice just at the end of this thing here, and what they can do to have a good life, and how to move through the law enforcement, the military field, without falling prey and falling victim to the darkness.
Things that you can't control, let go. Like just let bygones be bygones. Control what you can. And trying to control those things you can't, it's not worth the headache, right? Because what I try to do is I use work to get away from home, and home to get away from work. I don't want to bring all my work stuff home, and vice versa, right? I mean, there's some days I'm having bad days. Talk to the wife, who's my rock, who is love her to death, right? Like communication, talk it out. Have friends, if you have military friends or police friends. Have friends outside of that world, whatever it is you're working on, because at least they can determine whether you've changed, right, and become different, because they can kind of reel you back, right, if you've gone too far on the one way or the other, right? So that's what I recommend. If you're gonna get into law enforcement, I highly recommend Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Boxing, all that stuff is great, but you got to be able to control suspects, stuff like that. Find some sort of fitness and figure out a way to better yourself. Don't, whatever mistakes you've made in the past, you've learned, you've become better. Just mistakes happen, obviously, but we all make mistakes. Like, don't dwell on it. Improve and get better. What can you do to prevent it the next time it happens, kind of thing. Like that's advice I can give. And with dealing with people as a police officer, you can talk to them like a robot, hello, citizen, my name is Officer so-and-so. I talk to people like I'm at a bar, right? Talk to them like people, right? And they kind of slowly, they'll see the uniform disappear, and now they're just looking at the human, right? And if you can humanize the badge, ideally, that's money right there, right? So that's what I try to do at work. I try to do a bit of balance of going plain clothes or uniform, so they can see both sides. And I mean, at one point, the kids in the community center, they thought I was just a teacher, right? They didn't realize I was a cop, right? And then all of them said, I can tell a cop if I can see him a mile away, right? And, it's like, not really, right? But so many people are so used to seeing a different cop, with a shaved head or a certain haircut with his mustache or whatever, right? But so the tattoos I have, right, they're kind of shocked I'm a police officer. And like outside of work, when me and wife go and meet people, they don't believe us we're cops, right? So they're like, oh, I didn't realize cops were like that. I'm like, yeah, your views of a cop is from the movies or the shows, right? So yeah, they don't realize we're all human. So I recommend that just, have friends outside of the job, so they can at least kind of keep an eye, make sure you're kind of still on the same level. Control what you can and let go of everything you can't. And if you need help, go seek help, go get help. Don't be shy. suicides happen a lot on this job, and I lost a couple friends, and it's not worth it. The job is not worth it, right? Focus on something, talk, because everyone, when it happens, people are like, they should have called me. I wish they'd called me. So just call, pick up that phone, and then, you know, I had one incident where I'll be quick. I know you guys want to wrap up, but
No, go.
new recruit. We were going to a jumper call, and she, you know, I kind of asked her, I'm like, hey, if this goes south, are you gonna be okay? She's like, yeah. We're on the floor, kind of making sure no one kind of walks through it in the event this person decides to jump. They're about 70 floors up. Shortly after the person jumps, I approach the body because, you know, we're trying to do first aid. Paramedics and firefighters are there, and I hear a loud scream. I look back and I see her, and she's just like, what just happened? And I told her, go get the car. So she gets the car. I'm like, other officers are coming to me, hey, go check up on her. I think she's having a rough go. I'm like, no problem. I take her to the station. I'm like, listen, everything that we see is not normal. How you're feeling is completely normal. So don't try to be hard or anything like that. It's completely normal. You just have to understand what's going on. And I told her, listen, take the day off, you know, go do your notes, all that stuff. After that, go home, you know, go to your close friends or family, have a drink, go get drunk if you want. But the next day, deal with your shit. Figure it out. Give yourself that one day, right? And then figure it out after, right? You have to go get help, whatever it is, you have to. I had one incident another story where I thought I was going to have some PTSD. There was a jumper call, but she was on the balcony. I think it was like the 19th, 20th floor, some really high. I hate heights, my biggest fear. She was on the balcony on the ledge, leg over, ready to go. Get to the balcony and talk to her. I was like, please don't. I was trying to talk her down for like 5-10 minutes. It was the December 19th, 2015. I remember the reason why I remember it's because it was the day before my birthday. And there's our last day shift before we're off for 5 days, and trying to talk her. Finally, I ended up having to grab her and kind of suplex her back, so avoid going over with her. Take her to the hospital, all that stuff. Me and my partner, 2 cars, we pull up, doing the report. My adrenaline after like 3-4 hours was still like, my heart was beating on my chest. That night, I went out with my twin brother and our wives. You know, we went for a couple of drinks to celebrate her birthday. That Friday night, I had a nightmare. Felt like I was going over with her. Saturday, I had a dream where I just pushed her off. Like I tried to help her and I pushed her off by accident. Sunday, I was like, you know what? If I'm not good by Wednesday, I'm gonna go seek help. So I gave myself a line. If I got worse after that, then I'm gonna go get help. I gave myself an excuse to basically, okay, after this point, I need help. Monday, Tuesday, no more nightmares. I slept. I was like, okay, I'm good. I've been fine since, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I gave myself that line where it's like, okay, if I'm not good by then I need help. And so far, so good, right? So I just try that to tell other officers, younger officers, the same thing. Go seek help if you need it. Don't be shy. Call me if you need it, right? And we'll go from there.
Guys, that's like the best part of this whole show was this last little monologue here, Jose, because, and John, I think you'd agree that one of the key things you said a little while ago when I asked you, when we were kind of talking to you about your history, and I asked you, what is it do you think as to why things aren't affecting you? And I think the key is exactly what you're saying, is you talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
You're not one of us typical idiots, and I say that in air quotes, and I'm using it to make a point, but really the truth is at the end here, it's really true. You talking about it gets it out of you.
Mm-hmm.
Writing it down in a journal or saying it to a friend or, you know, screaming it out in the bush or whatever. But, you know, that's really good advice. And everybody needs to hear this. You got to deal with it right away.
For sure.
You don't want that to fester. So yeah, that was a really good monologue there. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
But do you think that it was easier for you to communicate because your spouse is in the job?
It's easier for her to receive it and be more understanding. Yeah. Like if she was a teacher or something like that, she probably wouldn't have a better understanding of it. She's the one who's always kind of throwing everything at me when she's having a rough day or whatever, right? I'm kind of her rock. We're both each other's rocks, but like, I think she has a better understanding of how and why I feel.
Yeah.
And it just seems like some people, like my family members, like they wouldn't understand. They don't know. And I don't blame them. It's not their fault, right? Just like they try to understand. So I've been more outspoken lately. We butt heads with a lot of politics, but the thing is, it's sometimes it's just they just need to listen. Just let it out of my system, right? And then leave it at that, right?
Yeah.
But for the most part, like they ask how's work, I'm like, it's fine, and I leave it at that. Most guys are like that, regardless of what trade or whatever environment they're in. Like how's work is fine, it's like the norm kind of thing, right? Like,
I'm okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So
as long as you are really okay.
100%, right? So
No, I was just asking this because well, we talked about it before, Jay. I mean, you spoke about your spouse seeing people you dealt with, but having a different perspective on it because you don't have the same work. My wife was a teacher. I can tell you I didn't bring the subject at home.
Mhm.
I didn't want to hurt her. I didn't want her to be hurt like I am.
yeah.
Right. So that's what I'm thinking. Like if coppers to coppers, if it's her job, might be easier to open up that Pandora box
Mhm.
because she's been exposed.
Mhm.
Right. My fear was my wife to be exposed. Right. So, and she's my rock. Don't get me wrong. She's there
for sure.
But I don't want to break the rock. I want to keep the rock. Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, no, I was just curious about that.
But if she ever tells you, hey, like, you're acting differently now, so that might be a hint. Like maybe, is it actually me? Maybe something is up, right? Maybe something is bothering me, right? So that might be a clue as to something's going on, right? And I try to tell people, like, you can talk to the psychiatrist and all that stuff. They might not even have an understanding of how the job goes, right?
Mm-hmm.
But talk to your guys on your platoon, right? And talk to them because they'll have a better understanding, right?
Yep.
Maybe they might have their solutions work for them, might work for you, right? Or figure out another one that works for you, right? So that's I'm all for the teamwork aspect, right? So which is lacking a lot, right, on the job. There's the brotherhood, sisterhood seems like it's diminishing, right? But
yeah, it really is. That, I mean, we've talked about that, and unfortunately, you can talk about it forever. It's just wherever you go, whoever you talk to. That's one of the biggest problems that's missing in the policing world is that there's no brotherhood. There's no camaraderie left, that you really feel like you can't quite trust that you can open up in this way that you really should, right?
Absolutely. And like, I mean, those corrupt cops, I mean, get them out of here. I do not want to work with them for the record, right?
Yeah.
This is all for being solid, but like, I'm not solid for that. No thanks.
Right? Yeah. Jose, where do everybody find you? And especially about the breathwork facilitation, because I think that's important. We'd love to advertise that for you.
Thanks. So you can find me on Instagram. So Duel_Lobos on Instagram. From there, you can always DM me, and then we can go from there. I prefer obviously in-person breath work. So if you're in the GTA or in that area, that's fine. You can always get a hold of me. You can always, the more people, the better. I don't want to do 100, let's just say, but bring a few people, 4 or 5 people at a time, family members, stuff like that, and kind of go from there. But I can try to do the webcam stuff, but it's not the same vibe, I guess. But it's the best option for those who are too far. But if anything, get a hold of me. I can try to find someone who does that in your area and go from there, if anything.
Awesome. Thank you for joining us, man. That was great.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah. Next time we'll have you on and we'll talk more about the policing world and how to improve it. Because I think since you've been in it a lot, I think it'd be awesome to have you back on. We could talk about that camaraderie and that brotherhood and how we can strive to make that better. I think that'd be a real good idea if you'd like to join us again sometime.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
Awesome. All right.
And aliens. Let's talk about aliens too.
Yeah, that comes up too much. UFOs and aliens and conspiracy theory.
Whatever. Throw everything in there, man.
Yeah. That's the garbage can episode, eh? Yeah. Thanks a lot for coming on there, Jose.
No worries, guys. Thanks for having me.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Cheers.